In the first volume of the Causes Celebres, a popular French work, is the following extraordinary story, which occasioned a serious lawsuit. Two men in trade who lived in the street Saint-Honoré in Paris, nearly equal in circumstances, both following the same profession and united in the closest friendship, had each of them a child much about the same age. These children were brought up together and conceived a mutual attachment, which, ripening with years into a stronger and more lively sentiment, was approved by the parents on both sides. This young couple was upon the point of being made happy by a more solemn union, when a rich financier, conceiving a passion for the young maiden, unfortunately crossed their inclinations by demanding her in marriage. The allurements of a more brilliant fortune seduced her father and mother, notwithstanding their daughter's repugnance to consent to the change. To their entreaties, however, she was obliged to yield, and sacrificed her affections by becoming the wife of the financier. Like a woman of virtue, she forbade her earlier lover the house. A fit of melancholy, the consequence of this violence done to her inclinations by entering into an engagement of interest, brought on her a malady which so far benumbed her faculties that at length she was given over by the faculty, apparently died, and was accordingly laid out for burial. Her former lover, who had once before beheld her in a similar situation, flattered himself that he might possibly again find her in a trance. This idea not only suspended his grief, but prompted him to bribe the gravedigger, by whose aid he dug up the body in the night time and conveyed it home. He then used every means in his power for recalling her to life, and was overjoyed on discovering that his endeavours were not ineffectual. It is not easy to conceive the surprise of the young woman on her resuscitation, when she found herself in a strange house, and, as it were, in the arms of her lover, who soon informed her of what had taken place on her account. She then comprehended the extent of her obligation to her deliverer, and love, more pathetic than all his persuasions to unite their destinies, determined her, on her recovery, to escape with him into England. This was effected, and they lived for some years in the closest union. At the end of 10 years, they conceived the natural wish of revisiting their own country, and at length returned to Paris, where they took no precaution whatever of concealing themselves, being persuaded that no suspicion would attach to their arrival. It happened, however, by chance, that the financier met his wife in one of the public walks. The sight of her made so strong an impression on him that for some time he imagined it must be her apparition, and being fully persuaded of her death, he could not for a long time efface that idea. However, he so contrived it as to join her, and notwithstanding the language she made use of to impose upon him, he left her with the conviction that he was not deceived at finding her a living substance. The singularity of this event gave more charms to the woman in the eyes of her former husband than she before possessed. He therefore acted with such address that he discovered her abode, notwithstanding all her precautions, and reclaimed her with all the regular formalities of justice. It was in vain that the lover maintained the right which his cares for his mistress gave him to the possession of her, that he represented her inevitable death but for him, that his adversary divested himself of all his own rights by causing her to be buried, that he ought even to be accused of homicide, for want of having taken proper precautions to assure himself of her death, and 1,000 other ingenious reasons which love suggested to him. But finding that the judicial ear was unfavourable, and not thinking it expedient to wait the result of a definitive judgment, he fled with his mistress into a foreign country, where they passed the remainder of their days without further molestation.